We can put all this information together to work out what the sign, whether it's positive or negative, of any given trigonometric ratio is, depending on which quadrant we are acting in. Now, in quadrant 1, when we're up here, our angle theta is here. We think about the values a and b. What we know here is that a is going to be positive because x is positive. And we also know that b is going to be positive. Now, because a is positive, the x coordinate is positive. That means that cos theta is positive. And because b is positive, that means that the y coordinate, or sine theta, is positive. So cos theta is positive and sine theta is positive. And putting those two together, we can also work out tan theta, because tan is the gradient. The gradient is positive because it's positive divided by positive. So tan theta is also positive because the gradient is positive. So in this quadrant here, all of them are going to be positive. Now, when we move into quadrant 2, we have a point here and we call it A, B, and this angle is theta here. In quadrant 2, A is now negative because the x coordinate is negative. So that means that cos theta is going to be negative. B is still positive because it's above the x-axis, so sine theta is still going to be positive. And putting these together, the gradient is negative. So tan theta is going to be negative because the gradient is negative. So in this quadrant here, only sine theta is positive. In quadrant 3, we are now down here, where that is our angle theta. And in this quadrant, A is negative because we're on the negative x values. So cos of theta is negative. B is negative because we are below the x-axis. So sine of theta is negative. And finally, tan of theta, which is the gradient, well, the gradient here is positive. So the gradient, tan theta, is positive. So in this quadrant over here, the only one that's positive is tan. Tan is positive. And finally, in quadrant 4, where this angle is theta and this is A, B, we have that A is positive now because we're back into the positive x values. So that means that cos theta is positive. B is negative because we are below the x-axis. So that means that sine theta is negative. And the gradient is negative. So tan theta is negative. That means in this quadrant, only cos is positive. So now we know if we're in quadrant 1, whatever the angle is, if we're in quadrant 1, sine, cos, and tan are all going to be positive. If our angle is in quadrant 2, sine will be positive, but cosine and tan will be negative. In quadrant 3, tan will be positive, but sine and cosine will be negative. And in quadrant 4, cosine will be positive, but sine and tangent will be negative. Now, it's useful to have a way to remember these, and there are several mnemonics to remember this. Some people talk about the cast diagram, which is C-A-S-T, the cast diagram going around there. I never really liked that because who reads going around that way? The way I like to remember this is to read it the way we normally read, which is going across here. And the mnemonic that I use to remember this is a famous TV show from the 90s, which is Sex and the City. This quadrant, S, sine is always positive. This quadrant, A, all of them are positive. This quadrant, T, tan is positive. This quadrant, C, cos is positive. There are other mnemonics that people have developed for these, remembering this. It doesn't particularly matter as long as you remember those green bits. In quadrant 1, they're all positive. In quadrant 2, only sine is positive. In quadrant 3, only tan is positive. And in quadrant 4, only cos is positive. And if we know those things, then we can work out the value or the sign of any of the 4 trig functions anywhere around the unit circle.